Welcome to the Digital Forester Podcast, where we talk to foresters about how they are using digital technologies in their day-to-day forestry work. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Digital Forester Podcast. This week, we're joined with John Pineau. He's the Executive Director with the Ontario Woodlot Association. John, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you doing?
Good. Well, we were just joking earlier that we suddenly have the summer weather. It's what, 30 degrees plus humidex 40. And for our listeners, I was just lamenting to John how my AC literally died yesterday. So now I'm shopping for a new AC and trying to figure out if I'm getting the friends and family discount or it's the hot as bleep. I inserted my own bleep pricing, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. So what's new, John? It's been a while since we connected. You had a good summer?
Yeah, great summer. Thanks, Kevin. It went too quickly as they all do, but up here it's funny. This is I think just about the hottest it's been in July and August, and now we're in September, and we were kind of wet and cold, or wet and colder than usual. So it's kind of a nice thing. I was outside a lot and playing some golf this week, and I had a tour with Lakehead University Faculty of Natural Resources Management students yesterday out in the woods here, and had a lot of fun.
So where are the woods and where is here for our listeners?
Well, I'm based up here in Mattawa near North Bay, and it's right where the Mattawa and Ottawa rivers meet. So kind of getting towards the top end of the Ottawa Valley, and it's in the Nipissing Forest, and that's managed by Nipissing Forest Resource Management. And yeah, it's just always lots of groups coming, especially students, to see what we do here. It's best forest management practices and the application of sound science and all the silvicultural decisions. It's a great place to mentor and show students, sort of the application of those best practices.
Absolutely. Well, I recall fondly. I think my first trip up to your neck of the woods was from work you were doing with the forestry research partnership up at the Canadian Ecology Center there, and that was my first exposure to that region. And since then, I think I've been there probably hundreds of times. So thank you for that. And so this is going to be a fun conversation because for our listeners, John, you've worked with FP Innovations, you worked with Canadian Institute of Forestry. You're a professor at Algonquin College. You're part of the forestry research partnership and innovate. We're probably dating ourselves now, and some listeners I know are laughing right now, but you're part of the FRP, the forestry research partnership back in the day. But you've always dealt with technology. So, but before we get into that and get your thoughts on where the world was, excuse me, and where it's going, share your background. How did you get into forestry?
So it's an interesting journey, and I'll date myself and I'll be honest. I'm 40 plus years in the sector now, and if you include summer student work, it's probably 45. And one of those typical forestry people. I'll probably never really retire. I volunteer a lot, and I just really enjoy what I do, and that's a real blessing, because it seems you never work a day in your life if you really enjoy what you do. But I started. I guess I worked in and volunteered in some of the provincial parks in southern Ontario. My older brothers were both keen biologists and naturalists, and I of course wanted to be just like my big brothers and followed in their footsteps, and ended up getting a biology degree from Trent University, and actually worked a lot for the Ministry of Natural Resources with summer contracts and then permanent 14 years, I think it was, from about 79 to 94, something like that, or 1980 to 94. But park naturalist, and kind of really got into the wildlife and nature and plant identification, trees. But then something happened, and I started to get the opportunities to try GIS and remote sensing and that sort of thing. So M&R sent me back to school with my salary when I was 30, and I went to Fleming College and got my tech papers in GIS, and that was a real boon. It really opened up a lot of doors, and I kept with the ministry for a couple more years, and then an opportunity came up in the early 1990s to go and work at Miller Western Forest Products in Alberta, and I worked there for 6 years as their GIS manager and company biologist, and just kind of a bit of a jack of all trades, but mostly GIS. And that got me really rolling, and I ended up working in that for 10 years. And I can still remember the first time I dealt with LiDAR and the point cloud. It came to me as I forget, I think it was on a tape, and I had a big Sun workstation, and I had 64 megs of RAM, which was huge then. And it basically, this LiDAR data, I loaded it up, and it brought that system to a grinding halt. And I couldn't really do much with it. And that was about 95, 96. But, it got better and better. But yeah, I worked at Miller Western, came back and reestablished in Ontario with our family, and worked for the Forestry Research Partnership in Tembec. And that's where I met you. Got to do a lot of extension and knowledge exchange, and we got to play a lot more with LiDAR. I remember with you, and I think it was Paul Treitz was your professor at Queen's. And I'm trying to remember the other fellow that came up. He's in Nova Scotia now, but we were working a lot with him too, and we just had a lot of fun with that. And LiDAR really started to get used in Tembec's sort of forest management units and sustainable forest licenses, and we helped through the Forestry Research Partnership. It was just I don't want to sound like it was a lot of toys we were playing with and having too much fun, but we were, And the thing is, those toys and that technology had huge positive implications and applications for forest management, and that was very exciting. And now it's pervasive. The change in those 20 years since we first started really getting serious about LiDAR and doing the good things with remote sensing. It's just unbelievable, the change. And I know folks at Lim Geomatics have done amazing work too, and it's just all kind of great to see that transition and evolution during my career, and to be a part of it was just a great honor and a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. So thinking of your MNR, Ministry of Natural Resources in Ontario, the province of Ontario. So thinking of that experience, and then the one you had at Miller Western on I joke sometimes, the dark side, the private sector side, which I'm part of. During that time, aside from LiDAR, which I definitely want to pick your brain a bit more about extension work and the toys, and I believe there is merit, especially in the forestry space. But thinking from a technology point of view, if you were to kind of take LiDAR aside, and then I was chuckling when you're like back in '79, I was doing this. I think I was 4 years old based on that math, and I thought we were closer in age than that. But okay, so we're still maybe a slightly deviation from that bracket, but same grouping there. But from a technology point of view, keeping LiDAR aside, was there a moment in time that was prior to this LiDAR transformation, another set of technology that really, from your seat, you're thinking back, you would say, wow, that was another game changer for us as foresters?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I would just say the use of geographic information systems and remotely sensed images, and that in a modern way, and what we take for granted now. I was in on the ground floor of that, and it was interesting. When I was with MNR, there was no GIS except I think a pilot kind of project out of our Timmins district office, and I was a little bit party to that right around the time that like I say, the MNR sent me back to Fleming College to get my GIS papers. But GIS was really new and different and exciting. And of course, I forgot to turn off my phone. I'm sorry. It was exciting, new, different, but scary to some. And you hear things like, well, we're not going to have jobs anymore. There's not going to be a need for anyone in the bush. And to this day, I still hear that from every time a new technology comes out, and I kind of call BS. It's just not true. We're always going to need boots on the ground and people that know what's going on in the forest and that sort of thing. They'll just be using different tools, and technology when they go. But yeah, I think back to I guess it was, kind of I guess the late 1980s, 90s, early 90s, and GIS was the scary thing to a lot of people, or just not really well understood. And you got the other kind of group that thought, well, it's just basically automating or creating digital maps, which was far from the truth. I mean, that's the output, the product of GIS analysis and that sort of thing. But the thematic maps, the overlays, all the analysis you could do was tremendously powerful, and that wasn't really apparent to a lot of folks in forestry. So watching the whole thing kind of happen, and seeing what was done in some companies or even government offices and what was done in others was really interesting to me. My kind of philosophy and approach, and I had tremendously good support with it at Miller Western, was to integrate it into everybody's daily work. And you wouldn't have a GIS department per se that would just produce a bunch of maps for you. You would basically be using it as a tool day to day. You'd input your data. You'd kind of do the basic analysis. You'd pump out your own maps. And that was a model that I thought was the best. I thought it was doing really good things for people that adds to their skill sets. They put it on their resume. I can use GIS as a high-end user, a super user. And I think I was doing everyone a favor with that approach, that philosophy. Other companies I saw, they'd have 5, 10, 15 people in GIS departments that would do it all. It'd be like a big black box office, and I just didn't think that was the way to do it. So
Yeah.
Long and short of it is, we implemented a really powerful integrated GIS that had tremendous end user options and capabilities. And by the time I left, people were using it regularly on a daily basis. Well, before I left, in fact, and they could generate maps easily. They could input their data, to make the maps easily. They could look at things. They could query themselves. They didn't have to go to some cranky IT person like me and say, "Hey, how do I do this? What's this? What's that?" My job was to set it up so that they could do it themselves, and all the data was accessible to them and make things happen.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, powerful it was a paradigm shift, and that's an overused term, but it was. It really was a game changer for everyone, and it set the stage for, I think, much better forest management planning, operations, and silvicultural tracking and monitoring, that sort of thing.
For sure.
And it was exciting, and I'm very proud of that legacy. And I know Miller Western to this day, I think, has a very powerful GIS system, although I've been gone 20 plus years from there.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. No, it's interesting for you to share your thoughts around that space, because we've heard it time and time again. Whenever, as you said, whenever there's a new technology, it's mass panic. Even with artificial intelligence now, right? It's the same. Oh, we're going to be out of jobs. Everyone's going to be, like unemployed, and often we end up maybe seeing gains in efficiency in certain areas, and others that just require a human eye. No matter what you do. But to that point, thinking of that experience, one of the things I always found cool with you is it's often, not often, always a half glass full type of view from John Pineau, always positive, optimistic about what the future can be. So thinking from that private sector side and then moving back to Ontario with the Forestry Research Partnership, maybe tell us more about what that was about, because there's a lot of cool projects that FRP funded, and I mean cool, like to your point, toys, but maybe introduce us to what FRP and Tembec and others are trying to do, and maybe pick one or two like super cool projects that you still think fondly about now.
Yeah, and it's a really good sort of transition into that sort of thought area and explanations, because so much of what we did with the Forestry Research Partnership was that same philosophy that I brought with me, from Miller Western, to get things into the hands of the foresters, the forest technicians, the everyone that was, basically managing the forest or in some way or another involved in, planning, practice, operations, whatever. And it was, again, you can't beat this, you just, you don't want to set it up so that people are reliant on a small group to get what they need to do a good job. It's got to be in their hands. It's got to be distributed, and that was the whole, I think, approach with the Extension Knowledge Exchange program at the Forestry Research Partnership, and I'll call it the FRP for short. I was very lucky. I got to work with some wonderful people there. George Brummer, who was my boss the second time, he was a boss at M&R, but moved to Tembec and then got me back. And Al Stinson, who's got a formidable reputation in the province, is just one of the top-notch forest professionals. Vic Wern, who was retired from the Ontario Forest Research Institute, Brian Batchelor, Guy Smith, just a bunch of folks from different organizations, Natural Resources Canada, Tembec, Ministry of Natural Resources, thinking Ken Durst from Tembec, who was really instrumental in getting LiDAR actually flown for some of the units up in the north. It was heady days, I called it. I wrote an article in the Forestry Chronicle about everything, and it's serving in my memory to kind of bring it all back. But yeah, the idea was get this out there, and as extension manager for the forestry for the FRP, that was my number one goal. And very often it involved, and it made it easy for me, is just connecting the scientist, a willing scientist or researcher, directly with the operational people. And I kind of, I kind of almost eliminated myself as being the communications transfer person, and it losing something in that, in that connection. When it was direct, the scientist and the researcher to the operations people, it was much better, and they were far more receptive, far more likely to use it. And, some people resisted things. Some people would, say we're too busy to try this, or, we've got, we got to get wood to the mill, or do this or do that. That's one of my favorite cartoons. Is I put it in just about every presentation. I probably overused it for the last 20 years, but it's a bunch of cavemen with a wagon they're pulling, and the wagon has square wheels, and they're, obviously it's not moving very well. And another caveman's holding up round wheels, and the caption is, "Well, we're too busy," and that's what happens. You got to take that time to learn and try new things, and then guess what? You find out, oh, this saves me a heck of a lot of time. I'm glad I got it, and I can focus on other things, and often more important things. And I'm not saying all people were like that, but it tended to be a bit of a mindset, and I can understand that, having worked in in a company, or worked in a let's just say a high stress environment where every piece of wood going to the mill matters, and managing the forest in the best possible way for public license matters, and all those things. You don't have a lot of breathing room, and someone like me come along and say, "Oh, you got to listen to what the scientist has to say," or come to this workshop, take a look at this video we made about this new opportunity to try technology, or try a little different approach. Anyway, that was kind of the thing. And so you had those, I wouldn't say battles, but you had those sort of challenges and a bit of resistance. But we were persistent with the FRP, and we I think we made it as easy as possible for people to take the time, and we showed them some good positive results that they could implement, and it was practically applied right away. And once they see that this is going to help and this is going to make a difference, they're more receptive as you move along. So after a few years, it was really ready. So two projects I was thinking that really stand out to me. One was the growth and yield project, to develop good growth and yield curves, which are essential to predicting wood supply and volume, and what the stand is going to produce over time. And in Ontario, we had at that time, before the FRP, what are called the Plonsky curves. And great, you know, they worked, but they were limited. You know, some of them were made, the growth and yield curves were made on very small data sets, and really the possibility they're going to be really accurate wasn't as strong as it could be by a long shot. And some would say I'm being kind here. Plonsky did a great job with what he had, and they were used and good for years. Well, we developed new yield curves through the Forestry Research Partnership, and Margaret Penner was big time involved in that, biometrician, Murray Woods, a whole bunch of other folks. And we got all kinds of data. We somehow managed to bring all the data together, and we even got data from Quebec and similar, you know, forest type stands, conditions, and that sort of thing. And we were able to develop, Margaret and the team were able to develop really good, comprehensive growth and yield curves for all kinds of different forest types, based on much larger data sets, significantly larger data sets. And they're also able to look at different intensities of silviculture management, what that would mean. So if you look at Wayne Bell's work, which is very prominent in the FRP as well, you could have the NEBI sort of suite of different silvicultural treatments, and a different curve of how the forest would grow over time based on those treatments. So natural, extensive, basic, intense, and elite silvicultural treatments. And it was just fantastic. Those curves were amazing. I think they're in use now quite pervasively, and they made a huge difference. You know, we can predict much more accurately, and our wood supply modeling is much better because of that work. Another project that really stands out to me, and this was Dean Thompson with Natural Resources Canada, and he came up with what it was called AgNav. So it was basically for aerial spray and the application of herbicide, and it would turn booms on, booms off for the application of herbicide, and it was all based on GPS integration with the system, and it worked really well. And I think it's still in use today. I was actually out. I saw some aerial spray being conducted this week, and the Lakehead students I was out with saw it yesterday too, with the helicopter booms and all that. But it allowed for very accurate release of the herbicide. So it wasn't going in areas where you didn't want it to go, say water or, you know, this or that kind of area. It was very strictly controlled within the boundary of the area you wanted sprayed. So a lot more control. And I thought that was a really neat project. Those are just two. I mean, certainly the LiDAR and the whole inventory side of things was, you know, something that, well, we talk about that anyway, but that was another one. But those two really stood out to me: the yield curves, the growth and yield curves, and the AgNav program for herbicide application.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, John. And I'm curious to poke at a couple of thoughts, and specifically, you know, we're talking about the FRP. They're maybe taking on riskier projects, or maybe testing ideas, hypotheses that maybe private sector or even government were allergic or maybe not interested in. But therein lies my question. I'm curious to know your thoughts and your experiences in this space, having done private sector, you know, government, and even nonprofit now. Is it a lack of investment in foresters and people that there doesn't seem to be this innovation engine built into these organizations intrinsically, or is it a dependency on these multiple stakeholders, on external research organizations to do that work? Is it, to your point, it's just not a priority for the forestry company? Because at the end of the day, it's like, when we think about forestry, it's like, yes, there's a lot of great companies that have moved forward and they're thinking and have embraced new technologies, and that's across the globe. But at the same time, when we try and even today, you know, push a little bit of basic GIS into some companies who, believe it or not, are not using full-on GIS, we seem to have this uphill battle. And that's something that's really, I've been stuck with trying to figure out. I often joke, is it because this forester already has 7 hats to wear or 7 jobs, and we're basically saying, hey, here's an 8th and 9th, and you're not going to get paid for it, by the way? But what are your thoughts? Like, what is this disconnect, at least in forestry, where you know, in other sectors there seems to be these, like, innovation always seems to be at the forefront, to increase competitiveness or brand differentiation between people or companies and organizations. What do you think it is in your experience, and share some thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because I don't want to come across as negative, and I think that there are some negative elements to this. First and foremost, I think it really comes down to leadership. If a particular company or an organization or association has good leadership, then they're going to embrace opportunities to modernize, to get more efficient, to improve how things are done. And that includes investing in technology and trying new and different things, and always being open to that. Now, that being said, I won't say it's bad leadership, but let's just say leadership that's stuck in the past, or is having a challenge just to keep profit margins positive. That can really impact and set the tone and the outlook of a leader. Even a good one can become mired in that sort of situation that just prevents them from, we just don't have time. And I can make light of it with my cartoon and that, but it is a real problem in some cases. And it's I working for FP Innovations, it was the same thing again. It seems all my jobs after Miller Western were involved in trying to shed some light on opportunities and get folks to try different things. And at FP Innovations, I led a team of industry advisors here in Ontario who worked in forestry, wood products, higher end, or let's say more bio product sort of things, like engineered wood or lignins and sugars from wood and all that sort of stuff. They often said to me, "You're pounding on the door begging to be let in." And when you finally let in, it's like you meet with a lot of what they would call excess scrutiny, or questions that are all based around return on investment, immediate return on investment. And I can understand that, and I can remember that from the Forestry Research Partnership as well, and in FP Innovations. Everyone wants to know, especially if you're in industry, what the return on investment is. How does this basically help my bottom line? And too often it was in the immediate term, and we'd have to sell something that was longer term. So that makes it tough. I find that forestry, the markets can really play a role in how willing folks are to try something new. Again, back to the profit margins. If lumber's in the tank and pulp is in the tank and everything's kind of just not making money, they're gonna, good luck. You're just not gonna be able to sell anything new or different, or try and get any sort of investment. It'll be really, really tough to do that. Other times when lumber's doing great and everything's selling and the profit margins are good, yeah, they'll entertain and try to bring something new and different in and welcome you more. But they're still keeping an eye on that bottom line, and they're probably paying off a lot of debt and trying to break even, over the course of several fiscal years.
Well, I was gonna say that I think the window's narrow, because even when we think of COVID times, right? Like things were booming on lumber, right? And then a lot of companies had record-breaking years, and that value is distributed to shareholders.
Yeah,
I didn't necessarily see it, like they're still on their fiscal years, right? So one might think, when times are bad, it's like in the current fiscal year, all right, everybody, we need to tighten up, sharpen the knives, tighten things up. But then when things are booming, the opposite doesn't happen, where it's like, all right, folks, it's like we're having a great year. It's like, let's open things up and maybe chase things. It almost seems like it's always swinging when times are tough, let's sharpen, but when times are good, maybe there's something that comes, but that's business. So,
and I hope I'm not oversimplifying this. The business side of the equation is a tough tough part of the business. It's the, you know, and you know, I don't have to live that. Well, I live it as a, you know, as an executive director of a nonprofit at a small scale, and that's another story altogether. You know, cash flow and making payroll can be challenging sometimes, and you're always trying to, you know, make things stable, and sometimes it can really impact your decision making or what you're going to allow. You know, somebody desperately needs a new computer on staff, and sorry, we just don't have the money. You're going to have to make do for another 5-6 months. I can just a story I got to tell. This is a funny anecdote, but the CEO at the time of FP Innovations, Pierre Lapointe, really nice fellow. He's retired now, but I can remember him telling me a story about a board meeting. So this was all the, you know, the captains of industry across Canada. You know, we're sitting around the table, and there's government people too. But this was at a time when they were talking about, you know, trying unmanned aerial vehicles, drones in forestry. And he brought that up as something that FP Innovations was going to study and give a try and see what goes on with drones. And he said he was almost laughed out of the room. And I kind of, oh wow. So he said after the board meeting though, he got 3 or 4 personal calls from people on the board that said, you know, if you want to try those drones, we'll work with you and let them be tried in our operations. And then you know, some of the folks at FP, Denny Cormier is now vice president there, and Udaya, I forget her last name, but they did a lot of studying on drones and their use. And again, it was all about return on investment, but there were definitely benefits and ways you could use drones. And as the technology has evolved and improved, it's pretty amazing. You know, you're going to get to the point. I tell the tech students at Algonquin College that I teach, you're all going to have, you know, by the time your careers are well established, I think you'll all have drones in the back of your trucks, and you'll be using them all over the place for this and that and everything. And well, OWA through some funding we got for the inventory project invested in 2 high-end drones, and we're using them all over the place. So it's just becoming pervasive in forestry. So that was just a funny story. That I think that would be about 15, 18 years ago.
Yeah,
that happened with Pierre. Maybe 12 or 14. I can't remember, but it just shows you how quickly things change sometimes.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is, you know, the focus is always, as you said, on ROI, but even recently, you know, that human factor dimension, I've started hearing more and more where leaders are saying, you know what, if we don't have these technologies, we will not be able to recruit, we will not be able to retain our people. And I've definitely felt that in the current, and it's interesting, or I find fascinating, because from a pure ROI point of view, the conversation has shifted almost where the ROI is important, but now it's these soft values that some leaders are recognizing. It's like, you know, if we don't do this, like we're in trouble, and forget the ROI. And then sometimes, I know, you know, it's like the amount of time you spend on the business case or ROI, you probably would have been done the project, the small scale project anyways. But organizations have their own momentum. Some are cruise ships and some are little speedboats, and none's necessarily better than the other. But so you brought in the FP Innovations, did some work there, and this is not intentional. I'm not trying to walk you through your career journey intentionally, just more the conversation where it's going. But you're with Canadian State of Forestry, and then now with the Ontario Woodlot Association, more on the nonprofit side of things. And we're, again, fascinating career, right? Like government and industry, you know, nonprofit, NGO, or different things. You've also done trips to China with the CIF and met the, you know, I believe the king, or was it the prince, or I don't know which one it is now, but you're now in this different space. So where did that come about? Is that a career transition thing, or is that just you mature in your interests, or maybe your values change and things that were once important are maybe not as important, and now you're interested in different things?
Yeah, that's another tough question, but a good one. I'd love to be able to say that this was all planned and there was a conscious sort of approach and set of ideas or a philosophy, a transition plan, but there wasn't. It kind of was a case of, well, let the chips fall where they may. And I like to think of myself as being pretty fearless and trying different new things. I get bored after 5 or 6 years and I need something new and different. That's a really maybe positive or negative personality trait. I don't know which. Maybe it has elements of both. But yeah, I was with FP Innovations. I think, well, pretty well every organization. I think the maximum was 7 or 8 years, but usually 5 or 6. And it was time to move on. I even told the OWA when I started, well, it's 3.5 years ago, I'm good for maybe 5 years, and I'm very close to retirement or semi-retirement. And although I don't think forestry people ever do retire, but the thing that I like and feel the happiest with, or the most proud of, is giving back and contributing positively to an organization. When I'll be honest, I won't give you the amounts, but when I left FP Innovations, and it was time, it was almost 6 years, and I needed to change, and the OWA opportunity came up and I won the interview. It was a significant drop in pay, but I was fine with that. I didn't want to fly all the time anymore, and I didn't want to do some of the things that I was doing at FP that were just, kind of getting, 20 years with the CIF, and I was altitude super elite with Air Canada for way too long. And I haven't been on a plane now for 3 years, and I'm kind of happy about that. But yeah, that's getting a little personal. But the OWA, it just seemed like a great organization with so much potential to grow and to do new and different things. And that's how I sold myself to them, and they definitely bought it, and I think they're pretty happy. The board really seems to like what I'm doing and how I'm approaching things, and we've grown. Our budget's quadrupled and our staffing is quadrupled, and we're doing all kinds of neat things like the private land forest inventory, desperately needed all across Ontario, and trying these community forest owners cooperatives where we can create economies of scale so that they can get much needed thinning done in their plantations and good silvicultural treatments. Trying our luck with agroforestry. We're hopeful there. We took over the Eastern Ontario Model Forest and its governance and management and the certification program. So we're doing a lot of work there and carbon offsets. So we've really gotten involved in a lot of different things, and that's what excites me, is that building something bigger and contributing to something much bigger than myself. And my single greatest legacy is, I'm just so proud of, is all the young people that I've helped, in some way or another to catalyze the start of their careers, give them an opportunity to start a good life that I've enjoyed. Work, and life balance is something that some of us find hard to achieve, and I'm definitely a culprit there. But again, I like my work so much, it doesn't seem like work a lot of the time. Stamina, when I'm in my 60s now, and stamina is becoming an issue, and I can't run as hard and as fast as I used to, but I still really enjoy it. But that's really what it's all about. And I'm a volunteer with the Canadian Institute of Forestry, where I was executive director for, I think, 7 or 8 years. Volunteer with the Canadian Ecology Center, which you mentioned earlier, and I'm still on their board. I volunteer with the Friends of the Pineau Research Forest. So I just love that place. I could pitch a tent and live there year round. If my back would let that happen, I guess I'd need to have a really good mattress. But anyway, all those organizations that it's kind of joking. All my friends are forestry too. At this point, you're not in touch with too many of your really old friends from high school, that sort of thing. But saying all my friends are forestry, and there's never a shortage of things to talk about. Not just forestry either. They're all salt of the earth types, and that's a real blessing. But
Yeah,
just very proud of the young staff we have at OWA and all the opportunities they're they're getting, and teaching at Algonquin College has been just a wonderful experience, although I'm slowing down there too. But just sharing what I've learned over the years, and
Yeah.
still something to offer.
Yeah. So as we look forward, right? Because you're teaching, you're staying current, you obviously know the business of forestry inside and out, having lived it for multiple decades and worn different hats and seen lots of things. And your back issues are probably courtesy of too much couch surfing. I remember seeing you be traveling and always conscious of spend, and like, hey, it's like I'm in this town, it's like I need a place to crash, and I'm like, so that's probably why I'm going to say that's probably why your back is what it is today. But stamina, golf, you just get a cart at that point, and
Yeah.
they'll pan out the 18. But if we look forward, and based on your experiences and things you're hearing in the mainstream news around technology, and granted that I think we align in that thinking of there's always going to be new tools that come about. Some good, some maybe don't live up to their potential, but it's just another tool that each need to figure out what it means for their business. But are there certain technologies that, as you're listening, watching, absorbing, even into building your curriculum at Algonquin College to teach foresters, the up and comers, what are some of those technologies that you're kind of keeping your ear to the ground on? And although maybe you're not able to fully play with it as a toy, as in the FRP days, and maybe you can through the college, but are there certain things that you're kind of like, this is reminding me of those pivotal moments that I've seen in technology, ones that I've worked with? Are there any? And if so, what would they be?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what I've already talked about, to see their full sort of implementation, application, and coming to fruition as regular tools. They're not quite on the cusp. They're not fully integrated yet, but they're on their way. And I think, again, drones, definitely so much potential there. And if I were I'm not teaching the remote sensing course this year, and I step back from it, and someone else is going to teach it, but I think I would really integrate everyone trying a drone, like getting to use it, and see what it can produce in terms of remote, low altitude remote sensing imagery, and how you could use it in forest management planning, and monitoring, all those sorts of things. I think that's really critical, and I don't think you're going to get as much resistance to that as some of these other technologies I've talked to, because everyone is really fully cognizant, and I think understands their potential use and opportunities in forestry. And the drones that we have at OWA, they can actually do photogrammetry, and you can get really nice 3D. It's kind of poor man's LiDAR, but it gives you really good 3D and excellent remotely sensed images of a woodlot or that sort of thing. So I think that's a big thing that's coming, and is well on its way to being established, but it's got to be, it will become more pervasive. I'm really impressed with the use and integration of GIS into our everyday sort of technologies, like phones and things. Like, I've got Avenza, which is an app that I think is pervasively used in forestry now, or is starting to be. And you can basically get a georeferenced PDF or TIFF, and it integrates to the GPS on your phone, and you can see where you are in any given forest stand if you got that georeferenced map on a PDF, that sort of thing. And we were doing a lot of LiDAR calibration and validation plots using Avenza, but we Bluetooth a very high-end GPS, and we bought 5 of them for OWA, or I don't know, 3 or 5 of them, but they're really handy. You can Bluetooth them to your phone and your submeter, so your plot centers are really accurate, and you're collecting that calibration and validation data for the LiDAR, and it's really really working well. So that sort of technology, I don't think I even pulled out the old GPS units at Algonquin College this year. We just used, I said, hey, everyone load up Avenza, and 9 students out of 10 had never heard of it, and now they think it's the best thing since buttered bread. So opportunities like that. And I see old timers Well, they're younger than me, actually. I shouldn't say that. They're using Avenza, and I'm like, wow, that's great to see. So, you know, younger guys than me, 40s and 50s, using Avenza, and they're, navigating around and finding, forest stands and walking into the middle of them. It's totally changed things. I mean, you still need to know how to use a compass and all the traditional tools. Like, make sure that that's driven into their head. We make sure of that, because sometimes, your phone runs out of juice or something doesn't work, and need to know the old tools too. But I think that's really critical. The one thing I wanted to talk about, though, Kevin, was the whole LiDAR scene, and I think its potential is suddenly being discovered. And I'll give the OWA, our organization, credit, and Ben Gwillim and Sinead Eggett, who work for us as the inventory sort of gurus. Ben more on the the modeling and analysis side with the LiDAR, and Sinead on the field data collection as our operations coordinator. But what we've been able to do is we've garnered all this LiDAR from, say, conservation authorities, municipalities, that sort of thing, and they weren't using it at all to its full potential. So a lot of them are using it for floodplain mapping or terrain modeling, and the vegetation point cloud was just kind of tossed aside and not used. And we said, no, give that to us, and we'll use it along with high resolution, say, satellite imagery, and we'll make you a good forest inventory that you can use. And they loved it. We did a pilot project in the United Counties of Prescott and Russell, and then down in South Nation Conservation Authority, South Nation Conservation, and we're moving steadily west, and a whole bunch more. The idea is we're going to do the whole province, private land forestry, privately owned forests for the whole province. And Environment Climate Change Canada and other partners have funded us to be able to do this. And that's exciting. I think, to me, the use of this LiDAR data to its full potential, or a much greater potential, is something that's really starting to happen, especially for folks that that own their own woodlots, or municipalities. And we don't count municipal land or municipal forests as crown land. It's really privately owned, and the conservation authorities and their catchment areas and that sort of thing. So a lot of excitement there, and a realization that they can have these really well produced, accurate, up-to-date, state-of-the-art forest inventories with as a sort of a byproduct or a residual of where they've invested in LiDAR. And that's really exciting to us. And it opens a whole world to our members and other woodlot owners to have good inventories, to get into the Managed Forest Tax Incentive Program, MIFTIP. It gives the forest service providers that work with private forest owners and our woodlot owner members more data, more information to help them do the planning and management on behalf of the woodlot owners. So everyone's benefiting, and it's more a case of better use or more complete use of something that's there, and it's coming into its full opportunity spectrum there.
For sure. Well, it's fascinating for you to describe that, because a lot of that early work was done in the early 2000s, and we're 2023. So even though we're talking about it coming to full potential, it's been 20 years, and I don't want to say we're only reaping the benefits, but maybe there's still more full benefits to be realized in many more years to come. And I like your analogy of talking about GIS and different tools as just another toolkit, because I often joke where we don't spend much time talking about Word or Excel or PowerPoint or any of those types of tools, right? And maybe someday GIS will, for forestry, just become like a word. It comes for the ride. It's like you learn it in school. You got different apps, drone. Yeah, just open up your drone mapping software. No one even bats an eye or thinks twice about that. So time will tell what the future will hold. So excuse me, thinking of as we're looking to wind down, obviously a really cool career and it's not over yet. I know you. It's like I laugh and you're like, I'm not going to retire. I'm like, of course you're not. It's like that's not going to happen. But are there any pro tips you would give some of the up and coming digital foresters to help them maybe reap the full benefits of their forestry careers, whether they're operational managers or whatnot? What would you tell a younger John, I guess that 1979 John at the early start of getting GIS and building collaborations and teams, and what advice would you give that John?
Yeah, I would say, to him, be open to anything, and don't be afraid to try anything. Don't be afraid to try new things, different things. Take every opportunity you can to learn, and remember that learning is lifelong. Continuing education, professional development is a total way of life and mindset. And read lots, experience lots, find good mentors. A lot of this I did, and I feel it's I don't know if anyone told me this. I mean, my folks were really good. My brothers were good role models. They just said, yeah, make yourself happy. Get a degree though. That was get a degree in something. It's okay. Yeah, well, I like biology. I'm always out there and in nature and that sort of thing, and it made sense. But yeah, good mentors. Kind of a fearless attitude of trying anything new and different. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and mess something up. You can always, okay, that's enough of that. I'll try something else, and that's cool too. I think the other thing I'd say is don't be afraid to move around. I spent a good part of my career in the boreal forest and don't regret it, and lived in a lot of small communities. And to me, they're the best. I mean, I've got 3 daughters, all of whom probably don't like small communities and want to live in the big city with amenities and that. But for me, and fortunately my wife, we prefer the quieter, more bucolic life, and I, we've always tried to live in smaller towns or outside of towns. But that's very conducive to happening with the forest sector. You can pick a lot of really great places to work if you don't mind, being way up north or in isolation, and try that. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that. There's lots of opportunity in central and southern Ontario too, where there's plenty of private land forestry going on. There's sustainable forest licenses right down, to kind of the north end, not too far north of Toronto, with the Nipissing Forest, of course, and West Wind and the forest down there, French River, that. But yeah, there's just so much opportunity in private land forestry all over, southern central Ontario, and more in the crown land forestry. But don't be afraid to move around, try it. I remember for a few years, everything I owned was in the back of a little 1/2-ton truck, and I went from contract to contract in the summer and during school years, and then for a few years after, before I got a permanent job. And it's fun. It's an adventure, and I think you're better for it.
Sure, for sure. Well, hey, my stuff might be in the back of my car as my AC's broken. I might be sleeping in it with the the electric vehicle running there. But thanks for sharing that. Pearls of wisdom, for sure. And the reason I often ask that question to all the guests is that 99% of the time the answer has nothing to do with technology, which I find fascinating. It comes back to people and their networks and relationships, and just fascinating from that point of view. So as we look to wind down, John, I know obviously I don't have to ask. I know you're open to anyone reaching out. This is part 1 for our listeners of 2. John's joined us on this podcast, and then Ben Gwillim, who is more boots on the ground, maybe more doing or scurrying around doing a lot of these projects. He's going to join us on part 2 and dive into more on the technologies and the boots on the ground type of work that the Ontario Woodlot Association is currently involved with, and that'll come a couple episodes later. But for those folks who want to reach out to you and just either to chat or maybe old friends and say hello, or people looking for someone to help them build networks and collaborations or accelerate, who knows what initiatives. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email's good. And my email is just john.pineau, Pineau, at Ontario Woodlot, all one word, .com. John.pineau at OntarioWoodlot.com. And yeah, you can phone me if you want anytime. I'm always on the phone, it seems, but I don't mind. 705-358-4261.
There you go, folks. So there's John sharing up his credentials live. So if you want to reach out and talk, then definitely encourage you to reach out to this guy. He's one of the good guys. So John, really appreciate you carving out some time to chat with me. I always love syncing up. I know it's been a while, and yet we still have not made it on to the golf course together. And truthfully, I only decline politely because I suck. Despite the number of times you see me on social media trying to swing a club, I still suck really, really bad. So I'm trying to get my game to a point where I won't have to play best ball off your cannonball drive from the tees there. But wishing you the best with the rest of your summer, and I'm sure I'll see you on the circuit at some of the events coming up.
So thanks so much for this opportunity, Ken. I really enjoyed chatting and telling my story, I guess. Yeah, it's been fun.
For sure, for sure. All right, man. All the best, and we'll keep in touch.
Thanks so much.
Okay, bye for now.